Hi, I'm Maggie.
And I'm Marin. And you're listening to Tell Me I'm Sorry, a podcast where we deconstruct and muse on depictions of girlhood in film, literature, and other media.
A feminist celebration of pop culture, the audacity of youth, and the ways we grow away from and into our bodies, beliefs, and dreams for ourselves and each other.
And today we are discussing
Ever After.
If I may say so, underrated 90s classic, which for those of you who don't know is a retelling of Cinderella, of which there are many, many retellings, but this is the only one that contains Drew Barrymore covered in body glitter during one scene. So
True.
Hence our decision to talk about it. A cursory Google search brings up this synopsis for those of you who aren't familiar with the film. This updated adaptation of the classic fairy tale tells the story of Danielle, a vibrant young woman who was forced into servitude after the death of her father. Danielle's stepmother, Rodmilla, is a heartless woman who forces Danielle to do the cooking and cleaning while she tries to marry off her other two daughters. But Danielle's life takes a wonderful turn when she meets the charming Prince Henry. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, that sums it up.
This movie was directed by Andy Tennant, whose name I was not familiar with, but upon researching him further, I realized that he directed a lot of things that I have heard of but not seen. Between the years 2000 and 2010, he directed the films Sweet Home Alabama, Hitch, Fool's Gold, and The Bounty Hunter, all of which... Maggie's shaking her head.
I feel like, I don't know. I have never seen The Bounty Hunter or Hit. Well, I feel like I've seen Hitch. I just don't think those are good movies. Maybe Sweet Home Alabama, though. I don't know. Anyway.
They are all movies that I have not seen, but I have watched the trailers for a lot because growing up in a household without cable, when I was a 10-year-old home during the summer, there wasn't a lot to watch on TV because it was just soap operas or game shows I thought were boring. And so I would just marathon watch trailers on YouTube as a primary source of entertainment because that's what old school YouTube was in 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
And I would just marathon watch all these trailers, and then the top comment on every single trailer would be either like, haha, I don't have to watch the movie now because they just gave me the whole plot in the trailer. And this was how we entertained ourselves. So I'm familiar vaguely with the plot of all those movies, but don't know much about them. I don't think any of them were that well received critically, but I could be wrong.
Except for Ever After.
Yeah, I truly do think Ever After was the apex of this man's career.
Yeah.
So his most recent film was called The Secret, which I don't really know what it's about other than it's a fictional dramatization based on a self-help book that allegedly the self-help book endorses various pseudoscientific concepts.
That's all I know about it as well. So I've never had a desire to actually watch it. I
didn't feel the need to investigate further, even though the movie has Katie Holmes in it. And I invested my Katie Holmes stocks very young and will never sell them, no matter what kinds of career choices she makes. There's 3 people who have writing credits for this movie. The first is Susanna Grant, who wrote the film Erin Brockovich, for which she was nominated for an Academy Award. She wrote an adaptation of Charlotte's Web, the one that has little Dakota Fanning in it. She wrote and directed the romantic drama, I guess you would call it, Catch and Release, which is one of the most confounding movies I've ever seen. I can't get into it now, otherwise we'll be here for
I think I've seen it.
It is...
Who's in it?
It's Jennifer Garner, who I love.
I love Jennifer Garner.
And Timothy Olyphant, who I find sexy.
Don't know who that is.
With just the most bananas premise for a romantic drama movie. And then she also more recently co-created the miniseries Unbelievable, and she wrote a couple episodes and directed a couple episodes, which is a very phenomenal miniseries starring Toni Collette and Maren Weaver. So yay for Susanna. Andy Tennant also has a writing credit here, and then as to someone named Rick Parks, who hasn't worked much. He wrote for some very interesting seeming sitcoms in the late 90s and early 2000s. He also has a writing credit on The Secret, the self-help pseudoscience.
I'm going to have to watch a trailer for that now.
No idea what the trailer for Ever After is like. I bet it has that trailer voice guy.
Probably.
You know the man.
It was 1998.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of, this movie was first released in theaters July 31st, 1998. And the poster tagline, because everyone loves a good poster tagline, was desire, defy, escape.
That does not fucking add up to me.
I feel like it does. I think an argument can be made that this movie is about escaping abusive family structure.
No, I get that too. I'm just seeing the words in my mind. Yeah. Absent of a poster image.
Right.
It sounds way too sexy.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You know, like it sounds very...
I don't know, the poster is kind of sensual.
The poster is sensual, but desire, what is it? Desire, defy, escape. Yeah. That sounds hot.
Yeah.
In a way that I don't think this romance is. I don't find this romance sexy. I find it more than that. Not that sexiness alone is enough. It certainly is. But this is, I don't know. Anyway.
But before we dive into the plot, we're going to do a little segment that we like to call Origin Stories, where Maggie and I briefly talk about our early memories of first encountering the film that we're discussing, what it was like to watch it for the first time as a kid, or if we've never seen it before, what we knew about it when we were younger.
Or just what we knew about it in general. How it was. Because I feel like if we do more contemporary stuff.
Right.
Well, I guess technically, I was younger yesterday than I am today.
That's true. That's true.
But not as young as I was on Tuesday, November 28th, 2000. Okay. I was very obsessed with Drew Barrymore, as many of us gals in the 90s were. I loved her very much. And so this journal entry, I have, Marin and I are both writers. I don't know if we've talked about that yet, but we're both writers. And I have been a writer like my entire life. I have drawers. Marin just experienced this today. I have drawers of old poems and stories and journal entries.
It's a full archive.
It's so much. And this is an old journal entry about Drew Barrymore. So this movie is super nostalgic for me for a variety of reasons. But at its core, it is because Drew Barrymore was the protagonist. All right. Tuesday, November 28th, 2000. Dear Journal, last Saturday, Sarah and I went to go see Charlie's Angels, while my dad took Mary, that's my little sister, to go see the Rugrats in Paris. It was so cool! Exclamation point. It's a bubbly exclamation point. It rocked! Bubbly exclamation point. Well, anyways, you know how much I love Drew Barrymore, bubbly exclamation point. The O in the word love is a heart. So, of course, it was a good movie because Drew Barrymore played Dylan, one of the angels. I wish I could be just like her. She is my other role model besides Jewel. It was the 90s, okay? I wish I could talk like her, walk like her, but especially look like her. And with another bubbly exclamation point. Underneath the word look, there's a squiggly line, really trying to emphasize this. When I grow up, I want to name my kids Jewel and Drew, assuming that they're girls. In parentheses, hopefully. So that is how much I love Drew Barrymore. I do want to mention that the very next journal entry is this confusion I have about why everyone at my school thinks that I am gay and saying that I have a crush on a girl, which I did. The journal entry before this is about how I had a crush on a boy. The fact that Drew Barrymore is sandwiched in between these little anecdotes of my burgeoning sexuality and the in-betweenness that has defined my life in so many ways is just a really beautiful thing. So that's how invested I was in Drew Barrymore.
Wow, that's beautiful. My story doesn't compare simply because this was a movie that I watched as a kid but held no nostalgic affection for. So revisiting it as an adult and feeling very enthusiastic about it was a fully adult feeling. However, my mom loves this movie. And when I was a kid, she was the one who showed it to me. She was like, oh my God, so beautiful. And she was obsessed with the wing dress at the ball. She was like, oh, you need to see the wings, blah, blah, blah. And I just thought it was kind of boring because I was a kid and I was still cultivating cinematic taste, whatever. But the one thing I do remember is that a museum in Omaha, I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, was having a special exhibit that was only going to be there for a few months of film costumes. And it was focusing specifically on, I think, period era costumes because there were dresses from Titanic in that exhibit and a bunch of other movies. And one of them was Ever After. And so my mom was like, Marin, we're going to the Durham Museum with your aunts and we're going to look at these dresses. And I did not want to go. Because I was like, that seems boring. And she was even like, the Ever After dress is going to be there. And I was like, I don't care. I remember going, but it didn't imprint in my brain the way that it would now. So I have seen the iconic white beaded dress with the wings in person before. And I didn't appreciate the experience enough.
That dress is so fucking iconic.
I know.
And I can't believe you got to see that.
I know. I'm so mad at myself for not appreciating the experience. If I ever got to see any dress, really, from Ever After again, I would be so moved and so excited. And I would cherish the experience properly.
Yeah. But that's what happens when you're young. And then you can cherish the experience later. That's okay. That's what it means to evolve.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I do want to say, though, that, and I believe I've told you this before, so the depths of my jealousy at you having this experience are deeper than I can describe, because my own wedding dress, it didn't look like her dress, but it had the energy.
It did.
It had the energy of it. When I put it on, I was like, I feel like Drew Barrymore in Ever After. Yeah. And then when my mom came to a fitting with me after that, she hadn't seen it yet, and I put it on. I hadn't really told her anything about it, and she said, you look like Drew Barrymore from that movie Ever After.
Plus, you got married in the forest, which there's a lot of scenes in the forest in this movie.
Basically, I was just living out my Ever After fantasy. That's what my wedding was.
Yeah.
More or less.
And it was fucking beautiful.
TJ's hair is very similar to the dude's hair.
He does have the floppy Henry hair. Oh my God. Holy shit.
What a dream. What a dream come true. I have been thinking a lot about fairytale, obviously, because we're watching Ever After, and about this strange role, maybe not strange, but this role that the movie itself and then also the celebrity of Drew Barrymore has played in my life. And that isn't to say that I think she is this perfect person, right? I don't know her, but I also think that it's okay. Nobody is fucking perfect. Right. And I don't have those expectations for people. And certainly I don't believe that she can do no wrong. And I just feel like I have to say that because the idea of celebrity seems to be taking on this life where you are not allowed to just say you like something without being critical of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that you can just say you like something and, you know, give me the benefit of the doubt or don't give me the benefit of the doubt that I have an understanding of how late stage capitalism is going to fucking destroy us all. Okay?
Yeah.
And now the idea of celebrity is part of that.
Yeah.
But I get to feel joy.
Yes.
Okay.
We can acknowledge that this past summer when the Hollywood writer's strike was happening, Drew Barrymore was a scab. And we can be upset about that, but also talk about how delightful she often is on screen. And we think she's talented. And she's also lived through some really tough shit, and I want her to have joy in her life. Mm-hmm. Just as we want to have joy in ours.
And part of the reason why I'm talking about celebrity so much is because the concept of celebrity is so in line with what a fairy tale is and does. It's an idea of something that's presented to us so that we believe in some type of story or ideology. So Ever After in particular, when it came out, yes, I was 10 years old. And it's just a really beautiful movie. There's a scene in particular when she is in these ruins and she's like, I have to go. And he's like, will you meet me later? And she says, I shall try. And he says, and I shall wait all day. That is my favorite scene.
Oh my God.
It makes me teary-eyed almost every time I think about
thinking
it.
about it.
I understand the implications of misogyny and sexism and embedded in a story like Cinderella. However, that doesn't mean we can't dream of a future where somebody waits for us all day. It's like the bare minimum.
Oh my God. Oh, this is, yes. Because this relates to so many things I want to talk about, if I may interject.
Yes, please.
And this gets at the ways in which this movie diverts from more traditional Cinderella narratives. In that, if you read Perrault's telling of Cinderella, or the Grimm telling, which actually is referenced in a kind of meta way at the very beginning of this movie, Cinderella has no relationship to the prince. He sees her at a ball and is like, I want to marry her, and then just stalks her until he finds the woman who fits this missing shoe. I don't need to analyze further why that's not helpful or good storytelling. She gets to have an actual personality in this movie. She gets to reveal that personality to another person, who in this case is a potential romantic partner, who then explicitly values that personality of hers and tells her so. Because my favorite scene maybe in the whole movie is when he knows that her favorite book, or one of her favorite books, is Utopia by Thomas More. And he wants to spend more time with her. And so he shows up and he asks her if she wants to go to the Franciscans' library to look at the books. I love libraries. I literally work in a library. Okay, I know what I'm about. If this scene is in a movie, I'm going to be on fucking board. The romance in this movie is very quiet in a lot of ways, and it's just rooted in, I'm excited to wait for you to see you again. I want to take you to this library because I know that's something that interests you, and seeing you excited about something is exciting to me. It totally adds new life to this very well-known fairy tale structure in a way that I had certainly never seen before.
I agree with all of those things. And part of what makes this movie so beautiful to me is watching it now and having listened to Drew's memoir and just some of her interviews and things like that. And she makes this comment in her memoir, and she talks about how I believe the direct quote is that she says, I've never acted a day in my life. She says that she only takes on roles in which she felt like she could really embody the character, where she could connect and become. So it's profound in a way that I think would be easy to overlook. Just thinking about Drew's life, she was emancipated from her parents very young, or from her mother, and she had very complicated relationships with them. She dropped out of school, but then she went to the library and just started reading a bunch of books. That's how she educated herself. So she didn't really have this relationship with a mother. And so knowing that, rewatching the scene where she's like, did you ever
Oh my God.
want to be my mother?
Yeah.
Is that the quote? Did you ever?
She said, she's like, was there ever a minute, even in the smallest measure, that you loved me? And her stepmother says, one does not love a pebble in her shoe. And it is devastating.
Truly devastating. And that isn't to say that Drew's mother doesn't love her. That's not my business. That's what I'm saying. But I'm sure there were moments where Drew she didn't get what she needed from her mom. Her mom couldn't give her that. And so knowing that, Drew has repeatedly played these roles where there's just this woman looking for love, looking for somebody to care about her in the way that she is. That added a depth to it.
And the thing I love about this movie is that it is about her finding this romantic love with this boy. I don't know. I don't know how old they're supposed to be. They knew each other 5 days and then got married. It's a movie.
It is weird. But they seem to be about the same age.
Yeah.
To be fair. There doesn't seem to be a weird age gap.
At the beginning, especially, he's acting like a bratty teenager. Because he's like, I don't want to be king. My life is so hard. And she's like, maybe you should reconsider what your role can be in helping our community flourish. But 2 things. First is that in these very old written Cinderella stories like Perrault and Grimm, Cinderella is entirely isolated the entire story. In the Perrault version, she literally has to befriend mice who can help transform her into a princess for this ball. She genuinely has no one. She is entirely unloved by everybody until she gets chosen by this man who's like, I will love you now. And then that is her reward, is to be loved by one person. And this movie, while you see Danielle yearning for this romantic love, she's not entirely isolated the entire movie. She still has people in her life who love her. She is close with the other servants in her stepmother's house, and it's obvious how much love they have for each other. We see her with her best friend since childhood, and he covers for her when she wants to go meet Prince Henry or whatever. And she even has Leonardo da Vinci, who becomes her best friend, because, in case you don't know, this movie does not have any magic in it. It's set in the 1500s in France, but everyone has British accents. I don't care. And Leonardo da Vinci is a artist in residence at the French castle, and he befriends Drew Barrymore, and he befriends Prince Henry, and he is the fairy godmother proxy in this movie, and it is so delightful. So the point that I'm getting at, though, is that this movie is, I think, making some kind of argument about the need for all kinds of different love. Even if you have the love of your found family and these servants who you have worked beside for almost your whole life, you can still yearn for the love of your abusive stepmother. And you can still also yearn for romantic love at the same time, because every time we love someone new, it changes us in some way and helps us grow in some new and exciting way. And so I think this movie is saying a lot of things about the need for community and how we become better when we are loved communally in a way that's really, really good and is a really smart improvement over versions of the story that came before it. The other thing is that at the beginning of the movie, we see Danielle's father has remarried the stepmother. And then not long after the stepmother and her 2 daughters come home, he dies. We see that scene, and she's a young girl. And then there's this voiceover that says, it would be 10 years before another man would enter Danielle's life. A man who was still a boy in many ways. And at first when I was rewatching this movie, I was like, is this movie trying to do something weird and paternalistic? And she's searching for love because her dad is dead and she's looking to fill the void of her father. And I was feeling weird about it. And then I remembered something that Bell Hooks wrote in her book, The Will to Change. She opens the book, the first chapter, talking about the fact that, like, women need to be loved by men. And she says this. She says, our collective hunger is so intense, it rends us, and yet we dare not speak it for fear we will be mocked, pitied, shamed. To speak our hunger for male love would demand that we name the intensity of our lack and our loss. And then I remembered this quote. And I was thinking about it in relationship to this movie. And I don't think this movie is doing something weird and paternalistic and her husband becomes her daddy stand-in. Because what we see in the movie is that she hasn't had anyone. The loss of her father was the most profound thing that had ever happened to her in her life. Because it's revealed that her mom died when she was a baby. She never knew her mother. But she was 10 years old and she literally watched her dad die. And so to have known this beautiful love from this man in the form of a father and then to lose that. And she is loved by other men because she has these friends and these servants that she works with. But I don't know. There's something about the way in which this movie embraces a woman's desire for a man's love that feels very healthy.
I think that, can I?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's because it's going beyond our heteronormative romanticization of how we think about women needing to be loved by men. Women need to be loved by men because they make up half the fucking world. And so men should care about women as much as women care about each other and men. I never thought of it as being paternalistic. And I think because it feels like going beyond that.
Right. Because the other thing too is that as her relationship with Henry develops, she feels comfortable and is able to open up about this profound loss of her father. So it's like with him, she is able to speak, as Bell Hooks says, speak that lack of her dad. She's able to speak about it in a new way that maybe she's never spoken about it with anyone before. And I find that very moving. And to go back to the tagline of this movie, Desire, Defy, Escape, this movie is about how this one girl's desires for herself, people tell her that she doesn't deserve what she desires, and it's her realizing that actually she does.
I think that goes back to my thought right away at the beginning where I was like, the tagline sounds super sexy. It sounds very sexy to me. Yeah. This movie isn't that kind of sexy. No. But this idea that platonic love, the depths of platonic love are often overlooked. She had a full life.
She did.
As far as how she was loved and who she was able to love in return was already fulfilled. He wasn't filling a void. She just happened to love him. I think that something the movie does really well is to show that he was a fucking child.
Yeah.
Though. He had to fucking grow up. Right. And she never backed down and was like, well, I guess I'll settle for your ridiculousness. Obviously, it just happens in 5 days. Nobody changes that much in 5 days, but it's a fucking fairy tale. So we'll let it go.
If I could I interject with my incorrect log line? Okay. So depending on like what streaming service you're on, or if you're on IMDb or Letterboxd, there are all kinds of different log lines, which are just 1 or 2 sentence descriptions of a movie that exists for any given movie. And so I found that in doing research for this podcast, I often stumble upon log lines that I think are inaccurate. And I feel like the inaccuracy of these log lines can actually have implications on how we think about the movie and how we talk about the movie. So I would like to bring to the jury what I think of as an incorrect log line for Ever After. And then after I read it, Maggie can let me know what she thinks. But this is from Letterboxd, which is a website/app that I usually love. But I was like, this is not it. Okay, here it goes. A unique 16th century woman, Danielle possesses a love of books and can easily quote from Sir Thomas More's Utopia. An intriguing mix of tomboyish athleticism and physical beauty, she has more than enough charm to capture the heart of a prince, ... after beating him with an apple. The end. That's how it ends. And do you want to immediately respond, or do you want me to...
I can immediately respond, and then I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Go for it.
So my first thought is, yeah, God forbid a woman is fucking good at sports and also attractive. And then also, not to completely dismiss the fact that this was the fucking 90s, and she was like, quote unquote, tomboyish. Whatever that means exactly.
Because her stepmother forced her to sleep in a barn and she was dirty?
Well, because she liked to swim in the lake, and because her best friend was like a boy, right? And they like to run around outside.
True. They do show them like running around in the mud when they're kids.
So, and whatever. Yeah. But, and also, what a strange thing. Throwing the apple.
Yeah, that's...
I honestly, it may be just more than anything, I'm just confounded. Like, why?
So my thing with this logline and why I have deemed it incorrect is that I feel like it very much manic pixie dream girlifies Danielle. And I think there are moments where the movie could come close to that, but then does something smart. And I'm giving all this credit to Susanna Grant because she's the first person credited with the script. And she's the only woman credited, where it then doesn't do that. So with the apple thing, what happens is she's working the fields in the morning. Someone has stolen one of the horses from the farm where they live. And she starts throwing apples at this. He's wearing a cloak with the hood over. She starts throwing apples at him because he's stealing the horse. And it turns out that the person on the horse is Prince Henry. And so at first I'm like, oh, she's angry and incites violence. She's not like other girls. Oh, she's so spunky. That to me is really annoying, or could be really annoying. And the reason I think within the film it actually works is because as she's throwing the apples at him, she says, that'll teach you to not steal my father's horse. And so what we know from that one line alone is that he has just stolen her dead father's horse. And so her reaction to throwing these apples at him isn't because they need a way for her to prove she's not like the other girls. It's because she is still in immense grief about her father's death and doesn't want to lose another piece of him.
Mm-hmm. It's not about him.
Right. It's not about him. Or when later she quotes from Utopia. And the reason I think that works is because there's deep intention behind her ability to quote Utopia from Thomas More. It's not just the script showing us that she's smart and sassy and look at how she can spar with this man. There is an intellectual sharpness to their interactions, which I think is interesting. But so much of coming of age as a girl is being excited about ideas and developing your own ideals, and that's what the movie is showing us. It's showing her doing that. And she feels connected to these ideas in this book because this was the last book her father gave her before he died. I think the reason I get so annoyed with this logline is because it is undermining the intelligence of the movie. Mm-hmm. Characterizing her in this one way that I don't think is actually true, and I think the movie is very smart and subtle about avoiding those manic pixie dream girl things. I don't know if you agree, but.
Well, and I think that, okay, a couple things. So that log line, I feel like, without meaning to, it makes it about men. It's not like that she is this character
right.
that exists. It's that she was tomboyish, meaning she was like a boy. And somehow a man liked her. I don't know. It's still just, it ends up being like her proximity to manness. Right. It makes it about that. And that is not true. I don't think that this story is about that. Certainly the story isn't doing anything interesting, or we're not starting a gender revolution in this story. Okay. By any means. But at least, and again, this was 25 fucking years ago. It was a different portrayal. It was a different portrayal of a woman in a fairy tale.
In the vein of Danielle's relationship to Henry, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Based on, like I mentioned earlier, I'm on Letterboxd. If you want to follow me, my username is just Marin Harrington, no spaces. I don't know if you're familiar with what Letterboxd is, Maggie. Are you?
I have no idea.
It's an app where you can log the movies that you watch and rate them.
Oh, that sounds fun.
It's really fun. It's very fun. And so I always am reading through reviews of movies that I've just watched. And I read some reviews that are very anti-Henry. And specifically, it seems like a lot of this negativity towards him is rooted in the outburst he has at the ball when he finds out that Danielle has lied to him about her identity. And so my question to you is that outburst forgivable, or is it unforgivable?
Oh. Honestly, I tend to forget about that outburst, even though it's so painful to watch.
It is really painful to watch.
And then Leonardo da Vinci is like, you're fucking stupid.
He tells him that that Prince Henry's excuse is horseshit, and he tells him he doesn't deserve her.
Okay, so my response, without thinking too much about it, is that there's this weird thing happening where as I'm getting older, I'm 35,
mm-hmm.
and as I'm getting older, I am increasingly more filled with rage,
mm-hmm.
and simultaneously have a larger capacity to forgive. Because the older I get, the more I recognize how desperately we have to give people the opportunity to change. Otherwise, what the fuck is all of this about? And when I was younger, I was like, fuck you, you're dead to me. And that isn't to say that you shouldn't say, fuck you, you're dead to me.
Sometimes people deserve it.
Sometimes people deserve it. And honestly, I do it a lot. Like not a lot, but if I meet someone 99.9% of the time, it's going to be a cisgendered white dude. And he's condescending towards me, or he's not letting me speak, or all these little subtle nice guy TM type shit. I never talk to them again. I do not speak to them. And so I'm not saying that you should endure bullshit, but I'm saying if somebody is able to recognize their bullshit and change, if we want to have a better world, I think we let them change. It doesn't mean that you have to fuck them or be their friend.
Yeah.
Or marry them.
Right.
But yes, in a nutshell, yes, I do. Because I think forgiveness is going to be at the core of our world not imploding.
I, too, find it forgivable. And I think that the later scene in the movie, once Da Vinci has chewed him out, rightfully so, and he realizes how much he's fucked up, and he goes looking for her, and he apologizes. And he gives her a real apology. Which, when I think about, like, all the movies I've watched, shows I've watched, whatever, where a male character is a jackass to the female love interest, it's so rare where they actually apologize or own up to what they've done. Can I just read this quick dialogue exchange? Mm-hmm. Okay. So he says to Danielle, I came to rescue you. And she says, me, a commoner? Then he says, actually, I came to beg your forgiveness. I offered you the world, and at the first test of honor, I betrayed your trust. Please, Danielle. And then she says, say it again. And he says, I'm sorry. And then she tells him, no, the part where you said my name, which always makes me cry. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about this in relationship to other things I've watched, in that often in lieu of just saying the words, I'm sorry, the man will try to kiss the woman, or he'll make some like big romantic gesture without actually saying I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And so while you're professing your love, you're not acknowledging the hurt that you caused. Again, this is me acknowledging that the bar's on the fucking ground. But the fact that the first thing he does is apologize and acknowledge that he fucked up, and he acknowledges how he fucked up. I'm like, you're already leagues ahead of so many other fictitious men, and probably real life men too. And the fact that he apologizes, and then once she accepts his apology, then he proposes. He doesn't propose in lieu of apologizing.
I'd agree. And also, did we provide context for what he's rescuing her from?
No, we did not.
Really briefly, her evil stepmother, like, sells her to this really gross fucking dude.
Yeah.
And she frees herself from him. And as she's leaving, Henry's walking up.
Because he found out, okay, this is where she's been taken. So he's like, I'm going to go rescue her. And she ends up rescuing herself. And again, her ability to like rescue herself from this creepy guy who's making all kinds of disgusting sexual innuendos towards her. I shouldn't call them innuendos, they're threats. Her ability to do that doesn't feel like some hollow girl power moment. It's like, no, she has always had to, her whole life since her dad died, she's had to do what she can to survive. And so this is her just surviving to the best of her ability. Angelica Houston is amazing in this movie.
So is Melanie
Linsky.
I fucking love her. I love her so much. I love her in everything she's ever done, everything she ever does. It's amazing. I feel like it's worth mentioning, though, when we were talking about how loved Drew Barrymore's character is, how loved the Cinderella character is, even without Henry. Mm-hmm. That also there's this very, very quiet love between her and, what is Melanie Linsky's character's name? Jacqueline. Yeah. Between her and Jacqueline. There's a literal sisterhood.
Like lots of traditional Cinderella storytellings, there's two stepsisters. There's Marguerite and there's Jacqueline. And Marguerite is very clearly the stepmother's favorite. She's wanting her to marry the prince and has all her stake in Marguerite. And then Jacqueline is often the butt of the jokes and is clearly the less favored sister, and so that sort of contributes to this kinship and quiet love, like you said, between Danielle and Jacqueline. I will say, one dark cloud that kind of hangs over this movie for me is the way in which sometimes they talk about Melanie Lynskey's character. They talk about Jacqueline because there's a lot of fat jokes. And while the way in which the movie ends and the way it shows Jacqueline getting away from her terrible mother, the movie doesn't actually believe Jacqueline is the butt of the jokes that her mother and her sister make. But a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I had heard a Fresh Air interview with Melanie Lynskey. I think she was promoting Yellow Jackets, which is that show she's on.
Also fucking phenomenal.
Which I have not seen.
Phenomenal. Okay.
But I believe it. I believe it. And she talked about her early years as an actress and always being cast as the quote-unquote fat friend, or just so much of that character's identity was their appearance being made fun of, and how she was often told by casting directors that she was too fat to be the lead or whatever. And so I can't help but watch this movie without thinking about playing that role and being told those things, even though the movie I don't think actually believes them.
But she was still cast,
right,
to have those things said to
exactly,
her.
Exactly. And she didn't say anything specifically about being in this movie. But now that I know that about her story, I can't separate it entirely from the movie.
I would definitely agree. I don't think I have any more comments on that in particular specifically, but I'm glad that you brought that up.
Something I love about this movie is obviously narratively there's a lot that I really respect about it, and I think it does very well. But on a technical level, in terms of the filmmaking on display, it is so carefully crafted, and there's so much attention specifically to the textures of this landscape where these characters are at. When Drew Barrymore's walking and she's sifting her feet through hay, or when Henry falls off that cliff into the lake and there's wet leaves stuck to his body. A lot of this credit goes to the director, I guess. Andy, you're a real one. But seeing such a meticulous attention to this movie in terms of how the shots are composed, how things are lit, how the costumes are made and utilized, the people who are making this movie really cared about it. And you can tell. And the fact that it's this mid-budget romantic drama that I think is really made for like adults, it really doesn't feel like a kid's movie to me.
I'd agree.
And the fact that people really cared making this movie, it just makes me feel good. The commitment to making the world and the film feel lived in and real, it's very much there. So I'm glad that you brought it up, because I feel the same way.
All that is perfect, because when I was watching this as well, and I know that I've had this response to it, is because I am about to start teaching Romeo and Juliet to my students. So I've been thinking a lot about Shakespeare.
Yes. Maggie teaches high school English.
Yes. And I totally agree. The textures of this film are really beautiful, subtle. So much of it happens in the woods. So the setting is present in a way that you don't really notice it, because it's literally just the natural world, beyond just the fairy tale essence of it. That's what connects it in my mind to the Weetzie Bat books, is the way that she creates a world, but in this way where, I mean, you notice it because there's a poetry to it. I would argue that there's a very like poetic way in which the natural world is in which the characters in Ever After are interacting with the natural world.
Right.
And obviously any fiction writer would be like, duh, setting is another character kind of thing. But I think in a fairy tale, that's especially true, because it's world building. But the world has to be such a place in which, even if there is no magic, technically, there is no magic, it feels like magic.
Yeah. Like that moment when Danielle, she's foraging for vegetables or something in the ground, and she stops and looks at her hands, and she's inspecting how like dirty they are. And then she decides, you know what, I'm going to go swim in the lake. And then that's where she collides with Leonardo da Vinci, who's in his water walking shoes. And it's funny and amazing. But I so respect the way the movie allows her those few moments of she's doing her work, she's inspecting herself, and she's deciding, I'm going to go to the lake. I want to feel clean. I want to feel cooled off. even though this is a movie without magic, technically that feels like a magical moment to me, because it's just this moment she's taking for her, even though she knows that she's probably not supposed to be doing that because she's not working.
Oh my God. I'm very excited by this conversation right now. And I wish that I was more prepared for what I'm about to bring up, but I hadn't even thought about it until this moment. But have you heard of the green world archetype?
No.
Okay. So this is this idea that you see in coming of age stories where girls are like, what am I?
Yeah.
In this world, in this patriarchy. Yeah. Well, anyway, so this literary theory, and I guess we'll have to link it in the show notes because I cannot remember. Anyway, so it's this idea that we see over and over again in these coming of age stories where girls have to go out into nature.
Yeah.
Because that is the only place where they can become who it is that they want to become without the expectations of a patriarchal society. And I feel like I can't believe I missed it. But that is happening in Ever After.
And that, not to be like Henry is oppressed because like he's literally the Prince of France, but like
he's a white dude with great hair.
He does like gray hair.
He's fucking fine.
But he feels stifled in his life, and it feels mutual in that they both have to be outside of their confined quote-unquote home spaces in order to come together. Why this love story works for me so well is because we see how they both become better people once they get to know each other. Obviously, Danielle is worse off in this movie and in need of emancipation more. But
right.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it totally does.
Okay.
And I just want to validate though the fact that I'm white. I'm a part of the oppressive regime of whiteness, which was created to be oppressive. I think it's important to acknowledge how harmful these powers that the patriarchy, misogyny, racism, how they are also harmful to the oppressor. Henry should be able to marry who the fuck he wants and to live a life that brings him fulfillment. Yeah. Everybody deserves that. And power structures that we have in place right now and that we did in this fictional 1500s French village, we all deserve to escape those.
So, Maggie, what does this movie make you want to tell your younger self? With the acknowledgement that our younger selves probably would not listen to us. But what would we want to tell them anyway?
I love that we're asking this question now because I feel like it is like a normal human response to want to be desired and to desire someone else. And so I feel like obviously as women, we're often meant to feel some level of shame for admitting that we want things, but also that we want to be wanted. We cannot want nor want to be wanted without somebody telling us we're doing it wrong. And so I would just say that I don't know, I guess I would just tell her, as cheesy as this is, to believe in things even if you think that they're pretty fucking cheesy. Right. That is where life happens. Your entire life happens in these frivolous moments. So if someone is telling you that it's frivolous to just like dream of having a partner or multiple partners, whoever or whatever they may be, I don't know. If you want to marry your car, I guess fucking
Wait, where is this coming from? Is it that episode of My Strange Addiction?
Yes. I just started thinking about like, well, I don't want anyone to feel, you know, like people find love wherever they fucking find love. Like, I don't care. Okay. And I think that what I'm trying to say is that there is no love that is frivolous. And some of my deepest and most profound and life-changing relationships that I still have been with friends that are technically platonic, and that the lines between romantic love and platonic love are always blurry. They're always blurry. You don't have to know exactly what side that you stand on, and because I think this staunch separation between romantic love and sexual desire and platonic love and friendship comes from a place of homophobia and heteronormative expectations. So fuck everyone. In summation, literally fuck everyone that where it's consensual in a really great way, and also fuck everyone, meaning fuck anyone who in a more metaphorical way.
In a like fuck off way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's my poem. That's the poetry of what I'm wanting to say.
Beautiful. Like,
wait, I'm sorry. I had to let out one last laugh because it was bubbling up about me bringing up like dude fucking his car. I don't know what's wrong with me.
I know.
I just wasn't ready to
mean, if you know, you know. Like that's like if you know, you know.
I just want to illustrate it. Very inclusive. I honestly like it's fine.
What does this movie make me want to tell my younger self? Well, one, I want to tell her that when she was 10 or whatever, however old I was, she just didn't get it because I thought this movie was boring and I didn't want to see the exhibit with the pretty dresses and the wings. And so one, I would just tell her, one day you'll get it. Your mom was right about this one. And then the other thing that this movie makes me want to tell myself is, and I'm going to quote our lovely, beautiful, wonderful protagonist, Danielle, where this is near the beginning of the movie when Henry's kind of being a prick and she calls him out for it. And she says to him, "You have everything and still the world holds no joy. And yet you insist on making fun of those who would see the world for its possibilities." And I think that I would just tell my younger self to sow joy where she could and to not stop seeing the world for its possibilities, even when people tell her not to. And that's still something I'm telling myself. I think it's something we're still all telling ourselves. But it's good that this movie exists to constantly remind me of it.
I feel like we can end on that.
Alrighty.
The end.
Well, thank you everybody for listening so much. We appreciate you and are glad that you're here. You can follow us on Instagram at Tell Me I'm Sorry. You can send us emails if you have thoughts you want to share about Ever After. Have you seen it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? You can email us at tellmeimsorry@gmail.com. And eventually this outro will be smoother.
Right. But right now, I feel like we have to end on the line, and they lived happily ever after.